Welcome back. Now, I am joined in studio with Professor Kirk Burkhalter as well as Gene Rossi via Skype. Gentlemen, good afternoon and thank you for being here. Kirk, I want to start off with you. We understand that at this point in the case, the defense hasn't rested as yet. I believe they have another witness coming next week, but while we have some time, the prosecution is beginning the rebuttal portion of their case. And I think, and please help me clarify this is the prosecution saying that, hey, a key person who's supposed to be a part of this conspiracy, and I use that in quotes because that's what the prosecution is going for, to this murder, this tragic murder of these 3 children and Miss Peters, could not have happened because this person was in Italy. It seems a little muddled at times, but is it clear enough for you or you think for the jury to really kind of grasp?
It's a little difficult to follow. So this is important to the prosecution's case because the defense has set forth this alternate theory of the crime, that this cartel committed these heinous acts, and in fact that there was some DNA found and it's a partial match to this gentleman, Angel, who wasn't in the country. So the prosecution has to establish exactly what you said, that he wasn't in the country. However, you do have issues here with the presentation, right? They're doing his testimony through an interpreter, through Skype and so forth. The documents are a little bit difficult to read. So I think the prosecution is doing the best that it can with the technology that is available. However, this is a following up to that riveting live testimony from Mr. Santos.
Yeah, Gene Rossi, I'm sure you've had this at many times. It's difficult, I mean, just as a defense attorney or a prosecutor, to do testimony through video when the person's not there physically, and then you add on top of that, as Kirk was saying, the layer of interpretation. I mean, when you compare and contrast what you got from Carlos Santos, who was there in person, it's so riveting, so grasping, and then now the difficulty of the technology, the interpretation. Do you think it's going to be a little hard? I mean, I think it's hard for me, but do you think it's going to be hard for the jury to really put credit to where credit is due?
Yes, I've been saying for 30 years, and I was teaching this to a class last night, the right to confront in the Constitution is a beautiful thing, because when you have that witness a few feet away from the jury and the judge, you can watch their demeanor, you can watch their hand gestures, you can watch how their eyes are blinking, and you can really determine by their body language alone whether what they say is credible. And we all have stories about how a witness, what came out of their mouth may have been good, but their demeanor was terrible and a jury discounted them. When you have a video deposition or Skype, you just can't get the gestalt, if you will, of the witness. I even had to do a witness by telephone at a post-trial hearing, and you just can't get the same flavor and nuance that you get when someone's in front of a jury.
Yeah, I think this, in the Segura case, this is one of the strongest points by the prosecution. I even was kind of questioning the defense to be like, hey, this seems like, I think Terry Austin was on earlier today about the preparation of the defense, but they might get away lucky with this one just because it's harder to comprehend with all those barriers there. So there you go. My apologies, first and foremost. This is actually Major Anne Marie Johnson. This is the Johnson, I believe, that Henry Segura, if you got that last bit there about Henry Segura hanging up on her. If you remember when he took the stand and testified, he's talking about Johnson. He couldn't remember her first name. That is Detective Johnson he's referring to. Gene, I want you to jump in on this. We're obviously trying to get the reactions of Henry Segura as he's getting this information to show if there's any consciousness of guilt, because I mean that's the legal phrase that we always use there. But sometimes I get where they're going, right? But even if you came to me and said, well, how do you feel after you killed your son or your child, and at least I believe I didn't do it, I'm not saying I did or didn't do it, you're going to get mixed bag reaction. You could get anger, you could get silence. It just seems like a normal human reaction. So how does a jury really get to the heart of consciousness of guilt in these types of situations?
Yeah, it's sort of like if someone came to me and said, hey, Gene, when did you stop beating your wife? I would be totally silent because I'm going, who is this person? So that doesn't move me one bit. And if I were the defense attorney, I would use that as a nugget. Members of the jury, you got all this DNA, you got the footprints, you got this, that, and the other thing. You got undisputed evidence, and they're building their case on the nuance of a pregnant pause and some comment that the defendant may or may not have made in jail or on a phone call. That's not beyond reasonable doubt. That's beyond absurdity.
Yeah, Kirk, I understand it. I get it. If you're talking about, for example, flight, if I take your cell phone and I'm out, I'm down Broadway, I'm running down the street, you can say, hey, Brian intended to take his phone. That's consciousness of guilt. But when it's murky like this, I think it really becomes a battle of the lawyers as to who can best interpret and explain to the jury. So how do you take this? I mean, the prosecution does have some meat on the bones here, but is it enough?
Yeah, well, we spoke about this a few days ago. One issue, and to Gene's point, Segura is a street guy. And by that, I mean that he is no stranger to interacting with law enforcement. And he has probably lived on the fringes of society with some type of what we might characterize as antisocial behavior for some time. So how would a person like this react? How would a person like this not react? I mean, we can't certainly impute upon him the same reaction, the type of reaction that you and I would have. The other, just as far as investigative techniques, just want to comment on, there was no need for the police to read him Miranda here. He wasn't in custody. When someone's being interrogated and they're in custody, they should be read Miranda. However, as a best practice for law enforcement, I did this for years, always, if I asked a question and I knew it was meant to elicit an incriminating response, whether the suspect was in custody or not, I always felt it was a best practice to Mirandize the person just for this reason. Don't want it coming up in court and somebody poking holes in it, and even if it was fine, it still becomes an issue.
I don't want to jump the gun on it, but that's almost an exact issue we're having with the Molly Tibbetts murder case in the hearing that we're going to touch later on. But yeah, you're right, because you don't want, as much as I am a defense attorney and a public defender, I'm also seeking justice. So I want the police officers to do a proper job to ensure that the innocent people are innocent and the guilty people are guilty. Because if we're not doing that, then what are we doing, right? and Gene, to Kirk's point, if we're not asking these questions properly, what are the negative repercussions in cases like this?
Well, the negative repercussions are the police and the prosecutors look horrible. And the professor brought up a good point. I did a criminal tax case once, and we called the lead special agent, and the IRS special agents have non-custodial Miranda right cards. And when they do a knock and talk at a suspect or target's home, the IRS special agents, even if they're not in custody, will give non-custodial Miranda rights. And I want to add something that the professor said. It not only avoids legal issues, it makes the law enforcement official look incredibly honest. And this one agent we had, he looked so honest because he told the jury, I didn't have to give those rights, but I'm trained to do it anyway.
Absolutely, and that's how the justice system should work, and it should work perfectly. We're going to continue with more of this case and others after the break.